On this adventure for Overview Overland, we head out to a peaceful, secluded little spot known as the Muntapa Railway Tunnel Park. The Muntapa Tunnel is a former railway tunnel set in isolated bushland around 40 kilometres north of Oki. The tunnel is located in a deep cutting along which the former railway line from Oki to Kuya ran. It is around 280 metres in length, running from northeast to southwest. The interior of the tunnel is formed from concrete. Away from the entrance, this has become blackened. The floor is sandy except towards the middle of the tunnel where the base becomes coarse gravel. Above the tunnel, a camp was set up for the workers, who also brought their wives and children along. This is what is believed to be the remains of a bakehouse. It was documented that Mrs. Edsa from nearby Nutgrove would also bake 44 loaves of bread in her home every day and deliver them to the workers at the tunnel. It was also likely that food and supplies were brought in with the railway equipment that was needed for the workers. A little further on from the bakehouse, we come across what remains of some tent camp. With over 100 men working on this tunnel, and in many cases they had their wives and children with them, all camping here for 13 months or even more. But being portable tents, very few relics remain of what would have been a massive campsite. Just across from the tent camps is what is left of a schoolhouse, where the kids would go to school each day. On the sign at the front, it talks about cooling the building and allowing a nice breeze to blow through. As we know, the Queensland heat can be quite brutal. But in my experience of the area, the winter months can be awfully cold as well. I'm finding it really hard to be jealous of this campsite, as much as I love camping myself. After exploring the campsite, I took the opportunity to put the drone in the air to appreciate how secluded this spot really is. Unfortunately, I had to cut the flight a little bit early after receiving high wind warnings back to my controller. Just look at those trees waving in the wind down there. Although the high wind warning cut my flight early, and later on there is some footage where I had some collision avoidance warnings going off, it proved to be worth every dollar as the drone returned back to me safely and ready to fly another day. The line was approved by Parliament in 1909 and construction began in September of 1910. This remains the only tunnel in Queensland that passes beneath the summit of the Great Dividing Range. The tunnel is one of a small number built on a branch line, and it is the only tunnel in Queensland that crosses between the inland and coastal sides of the Great Dividing Range. Work was completed and officially opened in 1913. All the black and white photos featured in this video can be found on the information board just inside the entrance. This is a photo of one of the crews that were working down in the tunnel. This would have to be one of my favourite photos. The guy on the left balancing on the rail, maybe trying to stay out of the mud. It's hard to tell. It wouldn't take too much rain to soften up this churned up soil. And the guy on the right looks like he's been taken by surprise. He looks a wee bit stunned. I find this photo quite interesting too. I'm unaware of what equipment they used to dig the tunnel. I'm assuming shovels, picks, possibly explosives. I think this photo shows just how much work is involved, and that's just the cutting. They haven't even got to the tunnel yet. The area between Oki and Kuya was populated by small-scale farmers, many of whom were of German origin. The lack of a viable transport route to market hindered the profits of these small farms. Bullock transport was uneconomic and slow. When arguing the case for a branch line to Kuya, the Commissioner for Railways noted that farms needed to be within 16 to 19 kilometres of a railway line to be viable. Construction of a branch line to Kuya had been advocated for some years, as well as improving the viability of farms and stimulating closer settlements along the route. The line would provide Toowoomba and the Darling Downs with access to much needed timber reserves at Blackbutt and Nanango. Of secondary consideration was a proposal to eventually extend the line to connect Nanango and ultimately central Queensland. The railway to Kuya was one of 7 branches of the Western Line that was built by day labour. Day labour construction of railways had been introduced by the Conservative government in 1901. The practice continued until the mid-1920s. To carry out this work, Queensland Rail maintained a construction branch with engineers and employed construction workers on a temporary basis. Initially, the revenue raised on the branch exceeded working expenses. Transport of timber peaked in 1915, and from that year coal also began to be railed from the area of Ackland. However, from 1916, the branch struggled to remain profitable due to underutilisation, and from 1926, road transport began to seriously affect the profitability of branch lines. This decline was offset by cost-cutting measures and the introduction of rail motors. Petrol rationing forced greater use of the rail network by the public during World War II, and this improved profitability while rationing remained in place. However, the cost of recovering from neglected maintenance during the war, added to the ever-increasing use of motor vehicles, accelerated the closure of the branch lines after the war. On the 1st of May 1964, the line beyond Ackland was closed. The Ackland to Oki section was kept open to support the operation of the coal mines at Ackland. The mine's principal customer was Queensland Rail. In the late 1960s, when Queensland Rail completed the conversion of their locomotive fleet to diesel, all but one of these mines closed. And on December the 8th, 1969, the Oki to Ackland section was also closed. Almost 115 years since construction began, I was able to appreciate the history and the efforts that surround the tunnel. While one little tunnel is only a pixel in a big picture, this place has been preserved well, and if you are visiting, I urge you to do the right thing. Leave it how you found it, and maybe in another 100 years, people like me will be able to come along and also enjoy the history surrounding the Muntapa train tunnel. As always, Overview Overland would like to thank you for watching. No matter what adventure or outing that you're on, stay safe, find your happy place, and I hope to see you out there someday.